Accidentally pressing the wrong elevator floor, a woman fell into a horrifying trap, trapped for 7 days, and died in despair. The victim had no food, no water, couldn't sit down to rest, and could only stand still and wait for death. This is the case of the corpse in the elevator, which occurred on August 20th, 2010, in Taipei, Taiwan. To this day, recalling the incident still sends chills down people's spines. A case with no perpetrator from start to finish, yet every detail is chilling to the core. What caused this strange accident? The answer will be revealed right after this. Before diving into today's story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any new videos. This horrifying story took place in a mixed-use apartment complex located in Sangxia, Taipei County. The building has a total of 12 floors, designed to include both residential and commercial areas. Some floors were occupied by residents, while others were sold or rented for various business purposes. To ensure privacy and avoid disrupting residents' lives, the building management decided to divide the elevator system into 2 separate areas. Elevator A served only business establishments and could travel up to the 7th floor. Meanwhile, residents had exclusive access to elevators B and C, which could reach up to the 12th floor. This arrangement was considered reasonable, clearly separating the commercial and residential areas. However, this seemingly safe division inadvertently became the cause of the tragic incident that followed. Among the many businesses in the building, the neurology clinic on the 5th floor was the most well-known. This long-established medical facility specialized in treating mental disorders and was trusted by many local residents for consultations and treatments. Mrs. Chen was diagnosed with early-stage mental disorder and had been brought here multiple times by her family for treatment. Normally, her children accompanied her to ensure safety and avoid unfortunate incidents. However, on that fateful day, feeling healthier than usual and not wanting to trouble her family, she decided to go alone. The woman had no idea that her solo trip would lead her to face death. Perhaps because she had visited many times before, Mrs. Chen felt completely at ease as she entered the elevator and quickly pressed the floor button she intended to reach. However, in pressing the button, she made a mistake. Instead of selecting the 5th floor, she accidentally pressed the 6th floor without realizing it. This coincidence unknowingly pushed Mrs. Chen into an unforeseeable death trap. When the elevator doors opened, instead of the familiar clinic hallway, she was faced with a closed iron gate. Confused, Mrs. Chen assumed that the rehabilitation center had installed a new security gate. Instinctively, she stepped out to take a closer look, not realizing she had arrived on the wrong floor. She tried to check if the gate could be opened. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The elevator had reached the 6th floor as selected, and since Mrs. Chen had fully stepped out, the elevator doors automatically closed. Surveillance cameras captured footage of the elevator doors closing after Mrs. Chen stepped out. The footage of Mrs. Chen stops here. What happened next to her that day and in the following days? Time passed quickly, from morning until late evening, but Mrs. Chen had not returned home, causing her family to worry. They called the clinic in the apartment building, only to be informed that she had never arrived that day. Panic set in as the woman's family began searching everywhere, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not find her. They immediately reported her disappearance to the police, but the subsequent investigation yielded no results. Police speculated that she might have suddenly relapsed after leaving home and wandered off in a disoriented state. However, the reality was far from simple. They never imagined that Mrs. Chen was still trapped inside the building. 7 days after Mrs. Chen's disappearance, a 76-year-old man named Zhang traveled from Hualien to Sangxia to visit his daughter, who lived on the 7th floor of the same apartment complex. What made the story even more eerie and perplexing was that on that very night, for unknown reasons, Mr. Zhang entered the same elevator where the incident had occurred. Instead of pressing the 7th floor, he accidentally pressed the 6th floor, an uncanny mistake identical to Mrs. Chen's days earlier. What led Mr. Zhang to make the same mistake? Was it mere coincidence, Or was there an invisible force guiding him to a place no one wished to go? And then, as the elevator doors slowly opened, can you imagine the horrifying scene that unfolded? As the doors parted, a stiff female corpse suddenly collapsed into the elevator. In a moment of panic, Mr. Zhang instinctively pushed the body away, causing it to become stuck between the doors, preventing the elevator from closing and moving. The woman's face was darkened. She fell backward into the elevator, lying motionless with her lifeless eyes staring up at the ceiling. Her eyes were filled with immense pain and terror, as if they still carried the fear of death. It was already 8:30 in the evening, and Mr. Zhang was so terrified that his heart felt like it was about to burst out of his chest. His legs gave out, and he collapsed into the corner of the elevator, trembling in sheer horror. An indescribable stench overwhelmed him, so pungent that it made his head spin. Imagine being in an elevator, the doors open, and suddenly a corpse collapses in, blocking the doors from closing. Can you imagine that feeling? Trapped in the elevator, facing a cold, lifeless body, with no other choice but to endure the overwhelming fear and suffocation. Each passing second feels like an eternity. Fortunately, Mr. Zhang had the mental strength not to faint on the spot. Seeing a corpse was horrifying enough, but now the elderly man had to remain in a confined space with the dead body for an extended period. In a state of panic, he had no choice but to call his daughter for help. Hearing her father's trembling voice, the daughter was so shocked that she froze, then rushed to the elevator, calling out to him before frantically seeking the building management and contacting the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene, checked the elevator surveillance footage, and witnessed the chilling moment. The footage showed Mr. Zhang curled up in the corner, while the woman's body lay blocking the doors. However, the biggest issue now was how to rescue Mr. Zhang. The only way to get him out was to move the body entirely into the elevator. Only then could the doors close and the elevator descend to the first floor. Despite the police and his daughter pleading with him, Mr. Zhang firmly refused to touch the corpse. After 40 tense minutes, realizing he could not stay in such a terrifying situation any longer, he mustered all his courage, tightly shut his eyes, and pulled the body inside. The elevator doors closed, and Mr. Zhang, along with the decomposing corpse, slowly descended from the 6th floor to the 1st. He stared at the elevator panel, trying to reassure himself that he was about to escape the horrifying nightmare. When the elevator doors opened on the 1st floor, the police immediately intervened and examined the body. Everyone was stunned when they realized that this woman was Mrs. Chen, who had mysteriously disappeared several days ago. The autopsy results revealed that Mrs. Chen had died approximately 5 days before being found, with the cause of death being dehydration and exhaustion. According to forensic experts, even a healthy person can begin experiencing mild dehydration symptoms within 24 hours without food and water. By the 3rd day, the body enters a state of severe exhaustion, with a sudden drop in blood pressure and gradual organ failure, making death almost inevitable by the 5th day. After days of searching with no leads, the woman was unexpectedly found right within the building. This heartbreaking truth raised numerous questions. Why did Mrs. Chen end up on the 6th floor instead of the 5th, where she intended to go for her checkup? What really happened inside the elevator on the day of her disappearance? And why was there a sturdy iron gate blocking the exit on the 6th floor, trapping her for days without anyone knowing? Mrs. Chen's tragic accident terrified the residents of the building. It remains one of the most horrifying apartment incidents in Taiwan to this day. Investigations revealed that the iron gate blocking the elevator exit was installed by the original owner of the 6th floor. The owner, a clergyman, installed the gate to ensure privacy and prevent disturbances from outsiders. However, the apartment was sold 15 years ago, and the new owner, after taking over, neither managed nor used the space, leaving it entirely abandoned. The iron gate remained intact and was never removed. But why install an iron gate right in front of the elevator when burglars could still use the stairwell to break in? It turned out that according to Taiwan's building security systems at the time, stairwell doors could only be opened from inside the building. This meant that the stairwell door on the 6th floor could only be pushed open from inside. From the stairwell side, it was completely inaccessible. As a result, the stairwell was entirely secure, with the only potential entry point being via the elevator. So, how exactly did Mrs. Chen end up trapped on the 6th floor? Based on the scene of the accident, the police theorized the horrifying moments Mrs. Chen might have experienced after stepping out of the elevator. Two unexpected incidents occurred almost simultaneously, trapping her with no escape. First, as soon as she stepped out, the elevator doors suddenly closed automatically. Startled, Mrs. Chen turned back, but due to her plump figure and slow reaction, she failed to step back in time. Second, when she reached out to open the iron gate, she was horrified to discover that it was locked tightly, making any attempt to push it open futile. In other words, Mrs. Chen was trapped in a narrow 40 centimeters gap between the elevator doors and the iron gate in front of her. The space was too tight to turn or move. She tried pushing the elevator doors or backing up, but it was all in vain. With such limited space, Mrs. Chen had no choice but to remain standing, unable to reposition herself or sit down. In such a dire situation, the most logical escape attempt would have been to call for help from the apartment owner or press the elevator button again. Unfortunately, both options were impossible. The iron gate only covered the elevator opening, with the call button located outside. From her position, she couldn't reach it. Even worse, the owner had long moved to another city, meaning the 6th floor was completely unoccupied. No one could hear her cries for help. To make matters worse, Mrs. Chen did not carry a phone, meaning she had no way to contact her family or call for assistance. From that moment on, she had fallen into a living hell, trapped in a place where no one knew she was, and no one could hear her desperate cries. The eerie silence of the 6th floor only added to the tragedy of her situation. The first hours passed in confusion and fear. But as time went on, exhaustion, hunger, and thirst became her greatest torment. No food, no water, and no escape. Mrs. Chen could only stand motionless, battling unbearable suffering with each passing minute. No one could imagine the horrifying despair she endured. She couldn't sit down, couldn't move, and was forced to remain standing for days, enduring the heat, hunger, and thirst that tormented her every second. Even a healthy person would struggle to survive in such harsh conditions, let alone Mrs. Chen, who had a mental health condition. The narrow space, like a standing coffin, imprisoned the woman until her death. Was the iron gate the main cause of her death, or was it human negligence? More notably, after the incident, the apartment management and the neurology clinic Mrs. Chen frequently visited remained silent, refusing to answer any media inquiries. Even the prosecutor did not return to the scene for further investigation. This haunting story left many unanswered questions that have never been fully resolved. First, why wasn't the elevator surveillance footage checked for 7 days after Mrs. Chen's disappearance? This abnormality only deepened the mystery, making the case even more inexplicable. During that entire period, no one from the building management proactively reviewed the footage, despite the victim's family reporting her suspicious disappearance. Only when Mr. Zhang accidentally discovered the woman's body in a tragic twist did the police retrieve the surveillance footage. If the search had been conducted earlier and the footage checked in time, perhaps Mrs. Chen wouldn't have suffered such a cruel death in the confined space where no one could hear her cries for help. This delay not only highlighted a lack of responsibility in management, but also raised concerns about the effectiveness of the building's security monitoring system. Second, why did the elevator still stop on the 6th floor when it was unoccupied? Did the management ever consider reprogramming the system to skip this floor entirely to avoid unnecessary risks? After the iron gate was installed for security purposes, no one questioned the potential dangers it posed. Was this the first incident of its kind, or were there other cases that had been covered up before? The management's complacency and lack of vigilance contributed to this tragic event. Third, the building management's negligence was further evident in their decision to allow the installation of the iron gate right at the elevator exit on the 6th floor. How was such an unsafe security measure approved without proper assessment by authorities? According to fire safety and emergency evacuation regulations, blocking emergency exits is a severe violation, yet it was overlooked, leading to irreversible consequences. This clearly demonstrated the management's neglect, prioritizing personal convenience over resident safety. Fourth, after the incident, police conducted a test by standing on the 6th floor and shouting. The results showed that the sound could easily travel to the floors above and below. So why did no one hear Mrs. Chen's cries for help during those 7 days? Did she not call for help at all, or did some people hear but choose to ignore them? These unanswered questions continue to haunt the public. The incident occurred in the 7th lunar month, a time traditionally believed by the Chinese to be the ghost month, associated with misfortune and bad luck. This belief added a supernatural element to the case, with many suspecting an invisible force concealed the confined space, preventing Mrs. Chen's cries from being heard. Or was it simply a chilling coincidence that the elderly man accidentally pressed the wrong button, leading to the horrifying discovery? The corpse in the elevator case became a hot topic for a long time, yet it remains an unsolved mystery. On October 12, 2012, the final investigation report concluded that Mrs. Chen's tragic death was ruled as an accidental misfortune. The prosecutor determined that the building owner failed to fulfill their responsibility to ensure resident safety and was thus charged with negligent manslaughter. In the end, they agreed to compensate the victim's family with 700,000 yuan, while the previous owner, although not facing criminal charges, agreed to pay an additional 1 million yuan. The iron gate, initially installed to protect property from intruders, ironically became the direct cause of a painful death. After this tragic incident, the building management decided to remove the iron gate to prevent similar accidents in the future. Additionally, the elevator system was reprogrammed to skip the now abandoned 6th floor, which no one dared to enter after the horrifying event. Mrs. Chen's death was not just a personal tragedy, but also a wake-up call about human negligence and irresponsibility in modern society. If someone had cared more, checked the cameras sooner, or simply asked the right questions, her life might have been saved, but it was too late. Thank you for listening to today's case story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more intriguing cases. A nurse mysteriously went missing on the day she returned home to visit her parents, and her in-laws insisted that she had run away with another man. However, her younger brother had a bad feeling about his sister's disappearance, as he frequently had strange dreams. When he started searching for his sister, the man was shocked to see a strange cactus pot surrounded by incense ashes, as if someone had burned them. But why would incense be burned at the spot where the cactus was planted? Could there be a terrifying secret hidden behind it? Before we begin the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive notifications whenever there's a new video. This is a true case that happened in Jishao City, Anhui Province, China. The main character in this story is Yang Gang, who is serving a prison sentence in Shanghai. He has an older sister named Yang Wen, a nurse who, according to her in-laws, had run away with another man long ago. However, he did not believe these slanderous words because his sister was not the type of woman to be unfaithful. Moreover, his sister loved her only son very much and would never abandon him. After months of searching, their parents in their hometown also gave up hope, unable to find any trace of their daughter. His sister's mysterious disappearance gave him an uneasy feeling, especially since he frequently had strange dreams. "Brother, there's a thorn on me. Please pull it out for me." Yang Wen stood in the dark ruins, continuously using her hands to pluck the thorns from her body. Seeing his sister standing in the darkness, Yang Gang hurriedly shone a flashlight to help her. However, he was shocked to see her body covered in cactus thorns. He rushed to help her pull out each thorn, but the more he pulled, the more they grew. They spread from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. In no time, his sister's entire body looked like a cactus. In his distraction, Yang Gang's finger was pricked by a thorn, causing it to bleed. At that moment, he woke up in shock. It was just a dream. This wasn't the first time Yang Gang had dreamed of his sister. For many years, he had often had strange dreams about her. But these dreams were not the same. Sometimes, he dreamed of his sister being trapped in a dark place with no light. Sometimes he dreamed of his sister crying for help while standing in a cold place, her hair soaking wet, her face sad, and constantly calling his name, Yang Gang. Although the details of the dreams were different, they all had one thing in common: his sister was pleading for help to escape the dark night. However, this was the first time he had dreamed of his sister's entire body covered in cactus thorns. He thought that perhaps his sister's mysterious disappearance might be related to this thorny plant. Why was it a cactus? And what did it have to do with his sister's disappearance? Could finding the cactus mean finding his sister? Yang Gang was certain that something had happened to his sister, but every time his family visited her in-laws, they were not only driven away, but also subjected to harsh words. "How dare you come to my house looking for her? Your daughter ran away with another man long ago. A daughter-in-law like that only brings shame to our family. Aren't you ashamed to have such a daughter?" These were some of the cruel words spoken by the Zhang family when Mr. and Mrs. Yang came looking for their daughter. Their son-in-law, Zhang Mowei, was not present, but he also showed no concern about his wife's disappearance. In May 2007, Yang Wen called her parents to inform them that she was planning to visit them and their relatives. However, after waiting an entire day, they still did not see their daughter arrive, and they were unable to contact her by phone. Worried, Mr. and Mrs. Yang called their son-in-law, but he angrily scolded the elderly couple and hung up. After waiting several days without any news of their daughter, they traveled to Anhui to search for her. However, when they arrived, the Zhang family drove them out of the house and continuously insulted them. They insisted that their daughter had run away with another man, abandoning both her husband and child. Feeling helpless in their search, Mr. and Mrs. Yang hurried to the police station to report their daughter missing. The news of his sister's disappearance reached Yang Gang while he was serving his prison sentence in Shanghai. Hearing what his parents said, Yang Gang was certain that something terrible had happened to his sister. However, the irony was that, being in prison, he was unable to help his parents deal with the situation outside. Yang Gang was the fifth child in the family, and the missing person was his third sister, Yang Wen, who was 8 years older than him. The whole family lived in Zhugang Town, Woqiu County, Luan City, Anhui Province. Due to financial difficulties, their parents were always busy working, so the responsibility of taking care of her younger brother was entrusted to Yang Wen. As a result, Yang Gang grew up under his sister's care and was very close to her, sharing everything with her. He even considered his third sister as a mother figure. Due to poor academic performance, he dropped out of school when he entered junior high. At that time, his sister Yang Wen had already married and moved to Jishou City, Anhui Province, Indo-EE. Yang Wen worked as a nurse at a local hospital and was described as kind and pretty. With such good conditions, everyone believed that Yang Wen's future would be promising. In 1995, through work, Yang Wen met Zhang Mowei, the son of a well-off family working in the armed police force. Although Zhang had an average appearance, he was very persuasive. Under his persistent pursuit, Yang Wen quickly fell for him. Since her husband's family was in the construction materials business, she called her younger brother to come and help. Despite being young and inexperienced, Yang Gang soon realized that his sister's life with her in-laws was not happy at all. His sister's mother-in-law was overbearing and harsh, frequently scolding Yang Wen over trivial household matters. She believed that Yang Wen was neither good at business nor capable of taking care of her child, constantly finding faults with her daughter-in-law. Yang Wen's husband, Zhang Mowei, always sided with his mother and even resorted to physical violence against his wife. Witnessing his sister being mistreated by her in-laws, Yang Gang was furious and wanted to fight back against his brother-in-law, but his sister always stopped him. Seeing his sister's unhappy life, Yang Gang became disheartened and decided to leave their business moving to Shanghai to find work on his own. In early 2007, Yang Gang was imprisoned due to his involvement in illegal business dealings. Unexpectedly, by mid-year, he received news of his sister's disappearance. Helpless and in pain, Yang Gang could do nothing to assist his family. While in prison, he frequently had strange dreams related to his sister. In 2011, after being released from prison, the first thing Yang Gang did was travel to Anhui to investigate his sister's disappearance. Unfortunately, the house where his sister used to live with her in-laws was no longer the same. The old street-facing house had been demolished and replaced with a 3-story building with 3 facades, featuring numerous store signs outside. Strangely, the new house was built with an unusually high foundation, different from the neighboring houses. Yang Gang asked around the neighbors and managed to get his brother-in-law Zhang's phone number. Zhang Mowei claimed that his wife missed her younger brother so much that she personally made steamed buns at home and brought them from Anhui to Shanghai to visit Yang Gang in prison. Upon hearing this, Yang Gang found it strange because his sister had never visited him during the time she went missing. After Yang Gang denied it, Zhang then said that his wife had run away with another man. He even claimed to have found a letter that Yang Wen had left behind. In the letter, Yang Wen wrote that she no longer wanted to stay in that house and had chosen to leave with the man she loved. However, when Yang Gang requested to see the letter, his brother-in-law refused, saying that too much time had passed and he no longer remembered where he had put it. Feeling that his brother-in-law's words were suspicious, Yang Gang was determined to go to the police station to request a re-investigation of his sister's disappearance. However, when he arrived at the police station in Jieshou City, Anhui Province, he was shocked by the authorities' response. According to police records, a case file for his sister's disappearance had been opened in 2009. In 2010, Yang's brother-in-law, Zhang Mowei, was interrogated as a suspect in his wife's disappearance. However, due to a lack of evidence, Zhang Mowei was released shortly afterward. What was even more shocking was that, under mediation from relevant parties, Yang Gang's parents had signed an agreement with their son-in-law. The agreement stated that Zhang Mowei would pay an annual support amount of 6,000 yuan to Mr. and Mrs. Yang. In return, the Yang family had to promise not to hold him accountable for Yang Wen's disappearance. The actions of the Zhang family made Yang Gang increasingly suspicious. He believed that his brother-in-law had taken advantage of his elderly parents to make them sign an invalid agreement. The fact that his entire family had stopped searching for his sister only made him more determined. He decided that no matter what others did, he would never give up looking for his sister. In the following years, Yang Gang worked to earn money while continuously reporting updates to the relevant authorities, hoping to restart the investigation into his sister's disappearance. For many long years, he persisted and refused to give up. Yang Gang embarked on the journey to find his sister, but it was not easy at all. Whenever he heard news about his sister, he would use his savings to travel to the location and verify the information. Even when the information turned out to be false, he still went to investigate, not wanting to miss any opportunity. To finance his travels to various cities for the investigation, Yang Gang had to sell a piece of land, exchanging it for 300,000 yuan to cover expenses. In the following years, Yang Gang started his own business, which turned out to be quite successful. He hired several lawyers to help support the search for his sister, who had been missing for many years. However, what made him most suspicious was still the Zhang family's house, which had been rented out for business purposes. Ever since he visited the newly rebuilt house after his release from prison, he had found it strange due to its unusually high foundation. After asking around, he learned that the Zhang family had renovated the backyard, which spanned hundreds of square meters. Although he wanted to check inside, he had no way of getting in, as his sisters-in-laws always made things difficult for him. His opportunity finally came in 2021, by which time his sister had been missing for 14 years. In 2021, his nephew, Zhang Yunming, held a grand wedding ceremony. His family was also invited to attend the wedding, however. Upon arrival, they noticed that some members of the Zhang family looked uneasy. Ignoring this, Yang Gang saw it as an opportunity to enter the backyard of the newly built Zhang family house and investigate. After having his fill at the banquet, he left the table and wandered around to inspect his brother-in-law's new house. Upon reaching the backyard, he was surprised by how spacious it was, but it was cluttered with items everywhere. As his eyes scanned the surroundings, he suddenly saw his nephew, Zhang Yunming, standing alone, sobbing. When he approached, he was stunned to see that the spot where his nephew was crying had a large iron bucket in the corner of the yard, and inside it was a plump cactus covered in sharp thorns. What was even more eerie was that it seemed someone had burned incense next to the cactus, as incense ashes were scattered all around the bucket. Instantly, a scene from one of his dreams flashed through Yang Gang's mind. In the dream, he heard his sister crying for help. "Brother, my body is covered in thorns. Please help me. Pull them out." Suddenly realizing something, Yang Gang stared intently at the cactus in the bucket, noticing that the incense ashes nearby were still warm. As he stood in front of the cactus, Zhang Yunming quickly pulled him away, saying the area was too dirty. Knowing for sure that there was something unusual beneath the cactus, Yang Gang did not return home immediately, but instead began asking neighbors about the Zhang family. A neighbor revealed that on the 1st and 15th of each lunar month, Zhang Mowei would occasionally come to the backyard to burn incense and offer prayers. What puzzled them was that he always stood in front of the cactus while performing the rituals. His nephew, Zhang Yunming, was also aware of this and would sometimes burn incense there as well. Hearing this, Yang Gang was now almost certain of his sister's whereabouts. However, he couldn't just use his strange dreams and the neighbor's words as a reason to obtain permission to dig up the backyard, so he remained silent, waiting for the right opportunity. Meanwhile, he didn't stay idle and immediately submitted a request for the police to investigate Zhang Mowei's activities. Yang Gang knew that Zhang was formerly part of the armed police force, but later took early retirement and entered the construction materials business, amassing a huge fortune. Zhang Mowei had bribed several people to warn Yang Gang to stop searching for his sister. Seeing the situation becoming dangerous, Yang had no choice but to pretend to give up the search. He acted as if he had turned to heavy drinking and spent time partying at bars. Even his family was deceived by his act, as he wanted Zhang to truly believe that he had abandoned the search for his sister. By early 2022, he finally found a good opportunity to reopen the case. In January 2022, the newly appointed governor of Anhui Province visited various localities to receive petitions and meet with residents. Knowing this was his only chance, Yang Gang, through his lawyer, submitted all documents related to his sister's 15-year disappearance to the mayor's office. Each passing day, he anxiously waited for a response that would allow the case to be reopened. In the following months, he dreamed of his sister less frequently. Yang Gang knew that the day the truth would be revealed was drawing near. By the end of June that year, the police department had established a special task force to investigate Yang Wen's disappearance from 2007. On July 21st, news of Zhang Mowei's arrest lifted a huge burden off Yang Gang's shoulders. After 21 days of interrogation, under police pressure, Zhang finally confessed the truth about what had happened years ago. It turned out that Zhang Mowei had murdered his wife during an argument and buried her body in the backyard 15 years ago. To mark the burial spot, he planted a cactus in an iron bucket and placed it on top. Fearing that her ghost would come back to haunt him, he would secretly visit the site on the 1st and 15th of every lunar month to burn incense. To avoid suspicion, he fabricated the story that his wife had run away with another man. Furthermore, to divert attention, he decided to rebuild the house and rent it out. Once the truth was revealed, 2 days later, the police escorted Zhang to the burial site and brought in excavators to dig up the area. After hours of excavation, the police finally found Yang Wen's remains buried underground for 15 years. At last, the poor woman saw the light of day again, but in the most tragic way possible. On the day the truth came to light, Yang Gang couldn't hold back his tears. Although he had long suspected Zhang Mowei as the murderer, he still couldn't comprehend why his sister had met such a tragic end. As he burned paper money for his sister, despite the windless day, the ashes swirled into a circle reaching head height. Many neighbors in the area believed that his sister had died unjustly and could not rest in peace. Furious at the Zhang family's 15-year cover-up of the crime, Yang Gang bought numerous funeral wreaths and placed them in front of the house where his sister was buried. After overcoming his grief, Yang Gang vowed that the true murderer must pay for his crimes. At that moment, his nephew, Zhang Yunming, appeared. Having held a grand wedding in 2021, he had rarely spoken to Yang Gang. Zhang Yunming bought many gifts, knelt before the Yang family, cried, and apologized, promising to stay neutral and not get involved in his father's affairs. However, just a few days later, his attitude suddenly changed. Zhang Yunming approached Yang Gang, handed him a document and said, "Uncle, please sign it. The other Yang family members have all signed. You're the only one left." It turned out that Zhang Yunming wanted his uncle to sign a petition requesting leniency for his father. What infuriated Yang Gang even more was that his siblings and parents had already signed the agreement without his knowledge. Seeing Yang Gang's anger as he threw the document to the ground, Yunming said that all the other Yang family members had agreed to write a plea for forgiveness. He even offered to compensate Yang Gang with 2 million yuan if he agreed to sign the petition and let the matter go. Looking at his strange nephew in front of him, who looked exactly like his murderous father, with no resemblance to his sister, Yang Gang felt heartbroken. He still remembered that the only reason his sister had refused to divorce her unworthy husband was to take care of Zhang Yunming. She had pinned all her hopes for the future on her son and devoted nearly all her love to him. However, despite growing up under his mother's care and affection, Zhang Yunming ultimately chose to defend the murderer. In a fit of rage, Yang Gang kicked Zhang Yunming out of his house and ordered him never to contact him again. Perhaps feeling ashamed after being rejected by Yang Gang, Zhang Yunming's behavior became increasingly outrageous. At the first court hearing, Zhang Yunming barely spoke a few words before loudly arguing with Yang Gang, accusing him of destroying his family. After that incident, Yang Gang completely cut ties with his nephew and refused to see him again. "Your mother's greatest pain was giving birth to and raising an ungrateful child like you," he said. In reality, Yang Gang had never considered signing any petition or agreement to reduce the sentence for the murderer. He thought that if Zhang Mo-wei had voluntarily turned himself in, confessed everything, and expressed genuine remorse for what happened to his sister, he would have been willing to write a letter of forgiveness. But 15 years had passed, and Zhang Mo-wei had remained silent about his sister's disappearance. If he had given up the search, the truth would have remained buried forever, and the murderer would have continued to live freely for 15 years. Although Zhang Mo-wei wept bitterly after the police exposed the truth and claimed to be remorseful, Yang Gang believed that his so-called brother-in-law had no genuine intention of repenting. "I have never considered reconciling with the murderer, let alone forgiving him," Yang Gang declared to the Zhang family. He remained firm in his decision, despite repeated pleas from his family. Yang Gang refused any financial compensation. His only hope was for the murderer to pay with his life. In October 2023, the court's initial verdict concluded that the case was due to family conflicts. Zhang Mo-wei confessed to his crime, pleaded guilty, and accepted his punishment, ultimately receiving a suspended death sentence for 2 years. In China, a suspended death sentence allows for a 2-year delay in execution. This sentence is often commuted to life imprisonment if the convict does not commit further serious crimes within those 2 years. Naturally, Yang Gang did not accept this outcome and appealed, demanding the highest possible death penalty for Zhang Mo-wei. In addition to seeking the death penalty, he also demanded that other members of the Zhang family be held accountable. He believed that the murderer's parents and even his son, Zhang Yunming, should pay for their actions. In June 2023, the prosecution rejected Yang Gang's appeal. He then filed a second petition with the Anhui Provincial High Court. Many friends and family members advised him to give up, but the man refused to accept defeat. "If I give up halfway, My sister will forever remain buried beneath that cactus, he said in anguish. Before 2022, the local authorities did not actively address the case and even tried to dissuade him from pursuing it. The yellowed receipts kept by Mr. and Mrs. Awazisan Yang over the years showed that the police had little interest in the case. He could not understand to what extent they feared the influence of Zhang Mowei's family to ignore such a major crime. I don't need money. What I want is fair and equal treatment, he stated. The mysterious disappearance case of the nurse, who appeared in her brother's dreams for 15 consecutive years, comes to an end here. Please share your thoughts, feelings, and opinions about this story in the comments section below the video. That's the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This will help us continue to bring you more meaningful content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos. The decomposing body of a young, unclothed woman was discovered in the underground garage of a bustling shopping center. When the perpetrator's identity was revealed, everyone was shocked and stunned. I feel like she came to me not for love, but simply as a transaction. The perpetrator's statement in court left many feeling regretful. Why would a student from a civil servant family with a Beijing household registration and a bright future murder the girl? What happened between them? Join us in uncovering the heartbreaking story below. Before we begin the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive notifications whenever there's a new video. This is a true case that occurred in Beijing, China. On April 12th, a decomposing female body was discovered in the Oriental Plaza garage on Wangfujing Street, the busiest street in Beijing. Police received a report and found the victim wrapped in a quilt, wearing a light-colored shirt with her pants pulled down to her knees. The perpetrator had abandoned the victim in a Fukang car, and a foul odor filled the surroundings. Shortly after, the police identified the deceased. The victim was Zhu Yueping, a student from the Foreign Languages Department of Beijing University of Technology. The victim, a Beijing native, had a beautiful and sweet appearance. As the only child in her family, Zhu Yueping had the means to pursue her passion for fashion. She dressed stylishly, spent money lavishly, and aimed to find a wealthy Beijing-born boyfriend. So who killed such a beautiful and well-off girl? Based on the scene, authorities confirmed that the victim knew the perpetrator, and they were likely very close. While the police were investigating, they received a phone call from a student named Zhao Liang. He stated that he suspected his friend of murdering the girl and abandoning her in the car. Coincidentally, the caller was also a student at Beijing University of Technology and knew the victim personally. After hearing Zhao Liang's account, the police agreed to let him call a friend. On April 13th, Zhao called his classmate and good friend, Wu Jiang. The person who answered the phone was Wu Jiang's grandmother. Seeing this, Zhao Liang simply asked for Wu Jiang's father's phone number. The elderly woman quickly retrieved her son's phone number for her grandson's classmate, as the young man said he had an urgent matter to discuss with the family. Wu Jiang had grown up with his grandmother since childhood, but he had not been home for the past few days. Seeing her grandson's classmate anxiously wanting to contact the family, the grandmother had a bad feeling. As soon as Wu Jiang's father returned home, the elderly woman immediately told her son that something might have happened to Wu Jiang at school. Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man quickly grabbed his bag and left the house. Just a few minutes later, the police arrived at Wu Jiang's house. Seeing that only the elderly woman was home, they hesitated to speak. However, at her request, the police revealed everything. They suspected that Wu Jiang had fled after murdering his girlfriend. Naturally, the elderly woman did not believe it and repeatedly asked the police if it was true. But when the police said that Wu Jiang himself had confessed the incident to his best friend, she was stunned. and were trade. Moreover, it was this friend who had asked the police for a chance to call Wu Jiang and persuade him to turn himself in, but he was not at home and could not be reached. Therefore, the police had no choice but to search for Wu Jiang and arrest him for investigation. Upon hearing this, the elderly woman could not believe her eyes. How could her well-behaved grandson become a murderer? That same evening, Wu Jiang was arrested by the police when he sneaked back to school to collect his belongings. When apprehended, the mild-mannered student confessed to the crime. Hearing the perpetrator's story, many expressed sympathy for him, believing that he took his girlfriend's life in a moment of recklessness. Wu Jiang was an exemplary young man with a good personality, top academic performance, and an outgoing, cheerful, and dynamic nature. In the eyes of his friends and teachers, he was considered the model student. Wu Jiang was born into a civil servant family in Beijing, with his father working as a logistics officer in a government agency. After his parents divorced when he was 2 years old, Wu Jiang mainly lived with his grandmother and father in Xuanwu District, Beijing. The divorce of his parents greatly affected his childhood. As he grew up, the absence of maternal love made him fear when others mentioned his family. In 2003, Wu Jiang was admitted to the Foreign Languages Department of Beijing University of Technology. With his outstanding academic performance, he quickly stood out and became the head of propaganda for the university's student union. Although he grew up without a mother's love, his father and grandmother took good care of him, giving him a monthly allowance of 600 yuan. When Wu Jiang was in his second year of university, his father saved up and bought him a Fukang car worth over 100,000 yuan as a reward. At that time, it was very rare for university students to own a car, so his silver gray Fukang attracted a lot of attention. Many people assumed that Wu Jiang's father was either a senior official or at least a wealthy person. Moreover, with the reputation of being a Beijing native, Wu Jiang became the ideal boyfriend in the eyes of many female classmates. Despite not having outstanding looks, Wu Jiang did not explain himself in response to his friends' compliments. However, his encounter with Zhu Yue completely changed his life. During an outdoor group activity organized by the university, Wu Jiang and his classmates were busy moving desks to the playground. At that moment, a girl suddenly patted him on the shoulder and called his name from behind. Wu Jiang instinctively turned around and saw a beautiful girl. The girl introduced herself as knowing Wu Jiang and said her name was Zhu Yueping, a fellow student from the English department at their university. This marked the beginning of Wu Jiang and Zhu Yueping's acquaintance, but they did not develop a close relationship at the time. It wasn't until the second semester of 2004, when the university organized a long-distance running competition, that they both happened to be on the same team. After the competition, the school hosted a light meal, and the two ended up sitting close to each other again. During the meal and conversation, Wu Jiang and Zhu Yuping exchanged phone numbers. However, they only occasionally called or texted each other and did not develop a romantic relationship. In his first and second years at university, Wu Jiang consistently ranked among the top students. He not only earned various awards and scholarships, but was also approved to join the Communist Party of China. As for Zhu Yueping, she was lively, dynamic, and also one of the top students in the English department. Like Wu Jiang, she had won scholarships and worked as a reporter for the school newspaper. The two began to stay in close contact in June 2005. At that time, Wu Jiang often drove the Fukang car his father had given him to school. Despite having a car, he remained enthusiastic. If any classmates needed a ride to class, or if it was on his way home, he was always willing to help. He was especially eager to assist beautiful friends like Zhu Yuping. Whether it was going out to eat, watching movies, shopping at malls, or hanging out, Wu Jiang had almost become her full-time driver. On July 19, 2005, he drove Zhu Yueping to Tianjin for a trip. When they stopped near a tourist attraction to buy a map, they returned to find the car window smashed and Zhu Yueping's handbag missing. Besides money and belongings, the handbag contained many important documents and papers, leaving her on the verge of tears. Wu Jiang calmly comforted her while calling the police, and they quickly caught the thief. Recovering her handbag, Zhu Yueping was so overjoyed that she cried and hugged Wu Jiang, feeling he had handled the situation well. At that moment, they officially confirmed their romantic relationship and started dating. After returning to Beijing, they became more comfortable with each other. During the summer break, besides shopping and dining, the couple even stayed together at a hotel for a few days. When night fell, Zhu Yueping often went to bars and nightclubs with a group of friends, both male and female. This made Wu Jiang unhappy, and he seriously told her not to hang out with other male classmates. Hearing this, she felt displeased and scolded her boyfriend, saying, "I'm happy with my life right now. Why are you interfering?" Wu Jiang believed that as her boyfriend, it was natural for him to not want her to go out with other guys. Unable to find common ground, they decided to break up. However, just a few days later, Zhu Yueping texted him to apologize. They got back together, and Wu Jiang resolved to treat his girlfriend even better from then on. In October 2005, the couple officially introduced each other to their parents. Wu Jiang's father was very pleased with his son's girlfriend and welcomed her warmly and enthusiastically. Zhu Yueping's parents initially did not approve of their daughter dating while still in school, but after learning that Wu Jiang was a class leader and a good person, they agreed. With the support of both families, the young couple felt very fortunate. However, this was just the beginning of their challenges. According to Zhu Yueping, the belief that when a man is with a woman, the man should spend money was absolutely correct. Since she was Wu Jiang's official girlfriend, she felt it was only natural for him to cover their expenses. Wu Jiang's father gave him about 600 yuan per month to cover his living expenses. Before buying the car, his monthly expenses were around 400 yuan, allowing him to save 200 yuan each month. After 2 years of university, he had saved over 2,000 yuan. However, since buying the car, especially after dating Zhu Yueping, his savings quickly ran out. In the first month of dating, he spent all the 2,000 yuan he had saved. Compared to Wu Jiang, Zhu Yueping was financially better off and had developed a habit of extravagant spending. Believing that her boyfriend was wealthy and that his father worked for the government, she spent even more lavishly. After spending all 2,000 yuan, Wu Jiang had to ask his grandmother for another 1,000 yuan, but it was gone in just a few days. Not wanting to lose face in front of his girlfriend, he had to borrow money from friends, accumulating debts of up to 6,000 yuan. However, this amount was nothing compared to his girlfriend's extravagant spending habits. What happened next forced Wu Jiang to taste the bitter reality of loving a materialistic girl. In October 2005, Zhu Yueping unexpectedly discovered that she was pregnant and informed her boyfriend. After a long discussion, their only solution was to find a hospital for an abortion. But at that time, Wu Jiang was not only broke but also heavily in debt. In desperation, he thought about his Fukang car and secretly pawned it at a used car market for 60,000 yuan. When she found out that her boyfriend no longer had a car, she refused to meet him, not wanting to date a poor man. Wu Jiang had no choice but to use the money from selling the car to rent one and buy clothes to please his girlfriend. After his father found out, he spent money to redeem the car for his son. Seeing that her boyfriend had a car again, she agreed to get back together, and they resumed going out everywhere. However, since he had little money, he could no longer spoil his girlfriend as before. Seeing this, Zhu Yueping showed dissatisfaction and complained that he was stingy. A girl only wants to find a wealthy husband. If you can't meet my basic needs, we shouldn't be dating, she declared. But at that time, Wu Jiang was so deeply in love with her that he couldn't agree to break up. Seeing news reports about people making money by buying lottery tickets, he decided to try his luck. However, despite spending a lot of money on lottery tickets, he never won anything. The couple often argued over money, and on several occasions, their conflicts escalated to the point where Wu Jiang angrily grabbed his girlfriend by the neck until she cried for help. To keep the woman he loved, he thought about his father's suburban house, which was being rented out and worth several million yuan, promised to him after marriage. When Zhu Yueping learned that her boyfriend had a house, her eyes lit up with joy. She even suggested they move in since it was close to their school. Later, she pressured him into buying furniture and appliances to furnish the house. However, what Wu Jiang did not expect was that at the beginning of 2006, his father suddenly decided to remarry. Moreover, his young stepmother was pregnant, and the promise of the house changed instantly. Wu Jiang's father planned to move in with his new wife to prepare for their second child. Seeing his father find happiness after over 20 years of being a single parent, Wu Jiang was happy and fully supported their relationship. But when he informed his girlfriend, Zhu Yueping became furious. She cried bitterly, insisting that the house could not be given to his stepmother. Zhu Yueping believed that in the future, the stepmother would take the house for her own child, leaving her boyfriend homeless. "Why are you so useless? How can I marry such a useless man?" she scolded her boyfriend. Although Wu Jiang didn't care much about the house, after hearing his girlfriend's words, he began to feel that if his father had a new love, he would no longer love him. Because of this, he went home to ask his father for the house, leading to a heated argument between them. Since the suburban house was rented out until April 2006, Wu Jiang's father planned to move in once the lease expired. Upon learning this, Zhu Yueping immediately suggested that her boyfriend move into the house before then. "Let's move into the house quickly and claim it first. Your father won't be able to kick us out," she said. The young man found himself caught in a dilemma between his father and his girlfriend. The house became a constant source of conflict between them, and every mention of it led to an argument. On April 8, 2006, Zhu Yueping heard that the IKEA furniture store was relocating. She called her boyfriend to go to the store and buy furniture, cookware, tables, chairs, and bedding because of the discounts. After bringing the items home, she still felt they were insufficient and wanted to go back for more, but the store had already closed. Around 8 p.m. that evening, Wu Jiang drove back to school and parked in a lot near the School of Economics and Management. The two sat in the car talking. His girlfriend kept discussing what should be moved into the house first, making him so uneasy that he tried to change the subject. However, Zhu Yueping persisted in suggesting they visit the house, buy clothes, and move in. "Why are you so fixated on that house? Sooner or later, it will belong to my father and stepmother. Besides, I just spent over 2,000 yuan on clothes last week," he complained. Hearing this, Zhu became furious, insisting that if they didn't take the keys and move in first, his father would take back the house. "Aren't I just looking out for you? A stepmother and a younger brother, they will take that house away from you," she argued sharply. Hearing these words, he grew even angrier. feeling that his girlfriend had touched a sensitive nerve regarding his family and insulted his father. "Why are you so eager to take over that house?" When he said this, Zhu Yueping was momentarily stunned. After a brief silence, she pretended to reconcile and suggested getting intimate with him in the car. However, just as they were about to get intimate, she suddenly said, "After this, let's go see the house." Wu Jiang felt his blood rush to his head. His girlfriend's constant talk about the house made him furious. In an instant, he was overwhelmed by despair, feeling that all his love for her had been in vain. A strong sense of disgust and hatred toward Zhu Yueping erupted in Wu Jiang's heart. He strangled his girlfriend with his hands. Zhu Yueping had no time to react, and within minutes, her face turned purple and she lay motionless. Seeing her lying still, he panicked, not knowing what to do. He dressed her and covered her with a newly bought quilt from the trunk. He then drove along the Beijing-Shenyang Expressway. Before the incident, they had planned to go to Beidaihe, so he drove his girlfriend in that direction during the night. However, after refueling, Wu Jiang got lost and decided to drive back to school. Early in the morning on April 9th, he aimlessly drove on the highway again before finally leaving the car in the Oriental Plaza garage on Wang Fujing Street. For the next 3 days, he wandered the streets like a soulless zombie. He considered following his girlfriend to the afterlife, but ultimately couldn't go through with it because he's still worried about his father and grandmother. At that moment, his friend Zhao Liang called him. Hearing Wu Jiang's unstable voice, Zhao took him back to the dormitory. However, when they arrived at the dorm, Wu Jiang suddenly whispered in Zhao's ear, asking what would happen if someone killed their girlfriend. Zhao Liang was shocked by the bizarre question. Before he could react, his best friend admitted to strangling Zhu Yueping and leaving her in his car. After saying this, Wu Jiang left the dorm without looking back. Doubting his friend's confession, Zhao Liang searched everywhere but couldn't find any trace of Zhu Yueping. It was only later that he called the police to report it and learned they had already found the girl's body. Knowing Wu Jiang was the culprit, Zhao Liang confessed everything and pleaded with the police to give his friend a chance to turn himself in. However, since Wu Jiang could not be found, the surrender attempt failed, and he was finally arrested by the police on the evening of April 13th. In the victim's room, the police found a diary that revealed many important details. In an entry dated April 1st, 2006, the victim wrote, "Why am I so unlucky to have met such a poor and terrible man? I was deceived by him." Another entry indicated her materialistic mindset. He always lies and boasts about how good his family is, but in reality, his situation isn't even as good as mine. I despise men like him and feel disgusted by him. In court, Wu Jiang admitted to all his actions and apologized to his family and the victim's parents. "I feel like she was with me not for love, but simply as a transaction." He explained his motive for killing his girlfriend. In the end, Wu Jiang was sentenced to a suspended death sentence with a 2-year reprieve. This sentence is often commuted to life imprisonment after 2 years if the convict does not commit further serious offenses. Many people felt pity for Wu Jiang, a student with a bright future, who ruined his life in a moment of recklessness. On the other hand, some also criticized the victim for being too materialistic. Although Zhu Yueping knew her boyfriend wasn't wealthy, she stubbornly stayed with him in hopes of securing the house. It was her insatiable greed that ultimately led her to tragedy. The case of the 22-year-old female student, murdered by her boyfriend over his father's house, has now come to an end. Share your thoughts, feelings, and opinions about this story in the comments section below the video. This video has come to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support will help us bring more meaningful content in the future. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.
On a winter day at the end of 1974, the case of the girl in the carton, found in Happy Valley, Hong Kong, shocked the public. The body was found naked, with the chest area cut off by the perpetrator, and the sensitive area burned, but there were no signs of sexual assault. Just a few days later, the police arrested the perpetrator, but it sparked a fierce protest from the public, claiming that the person was wrongfully accused. This was the first case in Hong Kong's judicial history where the perpetrator was convicted without witnesses, solely based on forensic results. Even though the perpetrator continually claimed innocence, they were still convicted, causing outrage among the public. The mysteries surrounding the case of the girl in the carton have persisted for decades, and the truth remains unknown to this day. This case is also classified as one of the top 10 most mysterious and puzzling cases in Hong Kong. Don't hesitate, join us as we unravel the thrilling details of what is considered the most mysterious case in Hong Kong over the last 100 years. The setting of this story takes place in Hong Kong, China. On the morning of December 17, 1974, amidst the bustling sounds of the city, a sanitation worker accidentally discovered a discarded cardboard box by the roadside, near the luxury apartment complex in Happy Valley. His curiosity urged him to open the box, but he was immediately shocked when he realized there was a naked female body inside. The police quickly arrived at the scene, and after an investigation, they identified the victim as Pin Yuk Ying, a young girl who had gone missing the previous afternoon. Pin Yuk Ying's family reported that she left home at 5:30 p.m. on December 16, 1974, to attend an evening class. A friend named Chen Bin stated that around 6:30 p.m., he received a call from Pin Yuk Ying, arranging to meet at the tram station in the Happy Valley area. However, when Chen Bin arrived, he did not see Pin Yuk Ying, so he returned home. A forensic examination revealed that Pin Yuk Ying had been strangled, causing her to suffocate. Her chest had been cut off by the perpetrator, and her private area had been burned, but there were no signs of sexual assault. The cardboard box containing the body was still relatively intact, showing no signs of being dragged over a long distance, indicating that the crime scene might be near where the box was found. After many hours of investigation, the police identified the Happy Valley area as the primary crime scene. However, despite interrogating more than 800 people, the police still had no clear leads. Pin Yuk Ying's classmates shared that she loved sweets, especially ice cream, and often visited Inmate ice cream shop after school. This ice cream shop quickly became a point of suspicion when the police discovered many cartons and machinery similar to the type of box used to store Pin Yuk Ying's body. Some wires and shredded paper found inside the shop also matched the type found in the victim's hair. The police determined that Inmate ice cream shop could be the initial crime scene. After screening the staff, they discovered that on the night of the crime, the only employee working at the ice cream shop was Yang Ping Ken, 28 years old. During the day, Keng worked as a salesman at a factory in Kwintong, and after his shift, he worked at the ice cream shop in the evening. The police also found 269 fabric fibers on the victim's body, 7 of which matched the fabric of Keng's uniform. Additionally, paper shreds were found on the victim's left wrist and back, the same type of paper found in the factory behind the ice cream shop. In the 1970s, with no witnesses, the police had to rely solely on evidence found at the crime scene and on the victim's body to identify the culprit. On January 3, 1975, the police raided the Inmate ice cream factory, marking a turning point in a controversial and complex case in Hong Kong's history. They seized red electric wires, mysterious cartons, 2 newspapers, and some clothes. The next day, Yang Ping Ken, an employee at Inmate ice cream shop, was taken to the police station for questioning in connection with the body in a carton case. Faced with a barrage of questions from the police, Keng calmly denied any involvement in the case. He denied knowing the victim, claimed he never saw her borrowing a phone, and had never seen the type of carton that contained the body at Inmate. Keng was released after a few days, but on March 27, 1975, he was arrested again. Despite intense pressure from the police, including psychological tactics like pretending to be the victim's ghost, he firmly stated, "I did not kill anyone." Although the fibers found on the body matched Kung's clothing, it was highly likely they had been on the victim beforehand. Moreover, the cartons did not have Kung's fingerprints, nor were there any of the victim's fingerprints at Inmate ice cream shop. The evidence collected by the police was vague and insufficient to convict Kung, yet the police were adamant in arresting him, believing he was the perpetrator. Furthermore, Kung and his newlywed wife were leading a happy life, and neither of them knew Pin Yuk-ying, so the police could not find any motive for the crime. Despite Kung's persistent claims of innocence, the police continued to insist that he was the culprit and proceeded to take him to court. On November 4, 1975, Kung was brought to trial and sentenced to death. As he walked out of the courtroom, he loudly proclaimed his innocence to the reporters. "I didn't kill anyone. The police framed me, bribed witnesses." This was the first case in Hong Kong's judicial history where the perpetrator was convicted without any witnesses, based solely on forensic evidence. Kung's case became a focal point of controversy not only due to its complexity, but also because of the lack of clarity in the investigation process. Many citizens were outraged, believing the death sentence for Kung was unfair, as the evidence was vague and there were no witnesses. Flyers criticizing the legal system were posted all over the streets, reflecting growing public dissatisfaction with the girl in the carton case. Notably, the victim's time of death was repeatedly changed. No fingerprints of Pin Yuk-ying were found at the scene, and her personal belongings mysteriously disappeared. Crucial details such as the last phone call Pin Yuk-ying received before leaving home, or who she went out to eat with, were not thoroughly investigated by the police. Another notable point is that Pin Yuk-ying's night school attendance log mysteriously disappeared. Yet the authorities did not track down those involved in that class. The forensic report showed that the victims struggled with all their might before dying, potentially leaving scratches on the perpetrator. But Kyung had no injuries. The security guard confirmed that Kyung returned to his apartment around midnight on December 17, 1974. Given the underdeveloped transportation system at the time, it was highly unlikely that he could have easily traveled between the crime scenes and his apartment. Moreover, several fingerprints were found on the cardboard box containing the body, but none belonged to Kyung. One of the key points of public outrage was that the police only focused on Kung and did not conduct fabric testing from other people's clothing. 7 fibers were said to match Kung's clothing among the 269 fibers found on the victim's body. But this was not enough to convict him. At the trial of Ouyang Ping Kung, a series of arguments from the defense and supporters raised questions about the credibility of the accusations against Kung. They argued that with his small stature, Kung was unlikely to have committed the murder, strangled the victim, and then carried the cardboard box to the scene alone. Additionally, the vest, a key piece of evidence, was said to be a common garment at the time, lacking sufficient weight to prove it belonged to Kung. Another suspicious point was that during the photo lineup, Kung's photos stood out distinctly from the others, which could have unconsciously led the witness to select Kung. At that time, Hong Kong had numerous ice cream shops like Inmate, so claiming that Inmate was the crime scene was inappropriate. Even if Inmate was indeed the crime scene, it was still possible that the murderer was not Kung, but one of the other employees of the company. Although the verdict had been delivered, Kung and his wife Zhang Jinfeng continued to appeal, even seeking the help of a renowned lawyer. However, all efforts were unsuccessful, and Kung faced the death sentence for the 4th time in December 1976. Public suspicion grew as the case unfolded amid widespread corruption scandals within the Hong Kong police force. The Anti-Corruption Commission, established by Governor Murray Maclehose, had just begun its operations but still had many flaws in its handling procedures. Rumors that the real murderer had bribed the police to throw dirt on Kung were spreading wider. On the streets, many papers calling for Kung's exoneration and protesting the court's decision continued to appear, showing that the public's faith in justice was gradually being shaken. Was it truly accurate to rely solely on forensic evidence to convict Ouyang Ping Kung? This was the question that deeply puzzled the people of Hong Kong. Despite knowing that overturning the verdict was nearly impossible, Yang Ping-kung remained steadfast in his belief in his innocence. In every meeting with his defense lawyer, Hu Hong Liet, Kong consistently affirmed, "I have done nothing against my conscience and should not be punished." Kong's firm assertion deeply troubled Liet, who had once advised Kong to plead guilty to manslaughter to reduce his sentence. However, despite all reasoning, Kong remained steadfast in his denial. This attitude led lawyer Liet not only to believe in his client's innocence, but also to feel helpless against the legal system at the time. Ronnie Tong, a renowned lawyer and member of the Hong Kong Legislative Council, who had also assisted Kong in his appeal efforts, carried his own deep sense of disappointment. In their final meeting, Kong couldn't hold back his tears, once again affirming, "I am innocent." The mixed emotions of Kong's helplessness and tragedy led Tong to decide never to take on another criminal case after this one. On February 9, 1977, amid fierce public debate, the governor of Hong Kong, along with the Administrative Bureau, decided to pardon Yang Ping-kung, sparing him from the death penalty and reducing his sentence to life imprisonment. However, many still believe that Kung was merely a victim of the corrupt system at the time. Rumors spread that the real culprit had used money to bribe authorities, causing the police to focus solely on blaming Kung, while ignoring other clues. After the conflict between the Hong Kong Police Force and the Anti-Corruption Commission in 1977, the case was left unresolved and was never reinvestigated. During his imprisonment, Kung was always a model prisoner. He devoted all his energy to studying and earned several degrees behind bars. His perseverance and character earned the admiration not only of the other inmates, but also of the prison guards. Many people in the prison believed that Yang Ping-kung was truly innocent and felt indignant on his behalf for being wrongfully imprisoned. However, his refusal to plead guilty caused all his appeals for clemency to be denied, as the authorities believed he showed no remorse. Kung's life became even more tragic when his wife, after years of tirelessly fighting for her husband's freedom, decided to divorce him in 1981, taking their daughter to start a new life elsewhere. From a husband and father, Kung was now left alone with his belief in his innocence, while the long years ahead showed no way out. The case of the young girl in the carton box in Happy Valley became one of the most shocking cases in Hong Kong during the 1970s. But no one could say with 100% certainty that the truth of the case had come to light. Although Yang Ping-kung was convicted of murder, the truth behind the case remained shrouded in mystery and suspicion. Many believed that the story was not just a simple murder, but involved undisclosed details. In 1995, when Kung was interviewed by the media due to his outstanding academic achievements in prison, the case once again attracted public attention. In a book titled The Killer in Hong Kong, Ba, nicknamed the bald detective who was in charge of the Pinyokin case, revealed that Kung had accidentally caused the victim's death. According to Ba, when Kung harassed Pinyokin on the stairs, she resisted fiercely, which led him, in a fit of anger, to unintentionally kill her. These details further complicated and obscured the case, leaving the public unsure which side to believe. Detective Bea also described Kung as a calm, quiet, but very intelligent suspect. During the interrogation process, Kung displayed an astonishing level of composure, despite all police efforts to extract a confession. In fact, to force Kung to confess, some police officers poured Coca-Cola into his nose and beat his legs with a ruler to coerce him into admitting guilt. However, despite these methods, Kung remained steadfast, insisting on his innocence. Bea did not stop there. He tried a psychological tactic, having a female officer call Kung in the middle of the night, pretending to be a ghost voice to scare him. Yet the very next day, Kung showed up at his workplace with a calm demeanor, leading Bea to admit that Kung possessed extraordinary patience and psychological endurance. Nevertheless, Bea did not easily give up. Determined to solve the case, Bea found 2 witnesses from a factory in Kwun Tong district accusing Kung of previous misconduct. Both testified that he had twice burned a girl's blouse and skirt with a cigarette. These testimonies, though defamatory, became a crucial link in the case, bringing Bea closer to forcing Kung to confess. Michelle Tu, a former legislative council member who consistently fought for justice for Kung, once received a Christmas card from him. In the card, Kung apologized for his belated confession, which greatly surprised Michelle. Moreover, during an interview with the media while Kong was still in prison, his statement, "I really didn't want to kill her, I didn't want to kill her," led many to believe that Kong had admitted to manslaughter. Was Ouyang Pingkung's confession one of regret or coercion? Many believed that Kong confessed solely to seek clemency. After all, after admitting to the murder, he applied for conditional clemency in 1997, which was granted. Lawyer Ong Ting Ting, known for her sharp analysis of strange cases, believed Kong was innocent. She stated that Kong confessed to the crime under the persuasion of the prison warden, as he understood that only by admitting guilt could he seek clemency. This makes people constantly wonder, was justice truly served in this case, or had Ouyang Pingkung become a victim of a contradictory legal system? On September 11, 2002, Kong walked out of the prison gates, freed, after serving 28 years in jail. It was not a full release but rather under a conditional supervision order, approved by the Long-Term Prison Sentence Review Committee. On September 16th, for the first time in nearly 3 decades, Kong appeared before the public, walking beside officials from the Correctional Services Department. His cold face and calm demeanor left many people questioning the truth behind the famous case of the past. Detective Plea, the investigator in charge of the case known for his signature bald head, was also awarded a medal for his outstanding work in solving the young woman's body in a cardboard box case. When asked about the murder charge, Kong quietly responded, "This case is closed, and for the rest of my life, I don't want to talk about it anymore." This coldness led the public to wonder, was this the justification of a cold-blooded murderer, or the hidden words of a wronged victim? In 2014, during a viral interview with the online program 99 Tung Tao Wan Road, Kong once again stirred attention when he hinted at his innocence, claiming he was coerced into confessing in exchange for clemency. He stated that at that time, the police were under immense pressure to utilize forensic science. They needed a successful case to prove the effectiveness of this technology, and he became the sacrificial pawn in that race. The interview sparked much controversy with the question, was Kong truly the killer, or merely a victim of a legal conspiracy? According to a member of the committee, this decision was not based on Kong pretending to be remorseful or public pressure, but on his positive rehabilitation record and good behavior in prison over the years. The committee unanimously agreed to conditionally release him, but not fully. Kong would be subject to strict supervision for the next 2 years, and only if he complied with all regulations would he be truly free. The public remains divided on this question, and the truth may forever be buried in darkness. After being released, Kong changed his name and remarried Tin Ting, a writer who used her husband's story to write the widely received novel Dangerous People. However, what attracted more public attention was not just his release, but Kong's controversial statements denying his past guilt. In the popular TVB show Guess Who I Am, aired on June 27, 2024, the production team revealed that they had met with Ouyang Pingkung in 2020. In the interview, Kong provided numerous personal documents, ranging from psychiatric reports to legal papers, to prove that he had no involvement in the murder. Was he truly innocent as he claimed, or was this just the final act in Kong's tumultuous life? This question remains an unsolved mystery. Kong steadfastly asserted that he had never taken a life, but no matter how hard he tried, his defense could not erase the public's doubts. By 2022, Ouyang Pingkung had passed away from a terminal illness, and with his death, the truth seemed to be buried forever. The case of the body in the cardboard box was one of the most shocking cases in Hong Kong's judicial history. Not only did the case garner massive public interest, but it also became a source of inspiration for filmmakers. Films such as The Final Judgment, 1993, Justice is Blind, 1993, and other TV productions like The Big Thing, The Body in a Cardboard, or The Enforcer's Corpse in a Cardboard, recreated the thrilling and mysterious details of the incident.